Gather round, children. It's story time. We're going to be talking about the three bears and the Goldilocks paradigm. In other words, Jomo Audio's Boxster, Supra, Spyder, and Cappuccino. Randomly. Welcome to the Jomo Audio IEM shootout. Let's discuss. Well, I hope you got your drink and you're nicely tucked in, because this is going to be a lengthy one. We have 4 IEMs on the table: the Cappuccino, Boxster, Supra, and Spyder. $300, $600, $800, and $1,000. There's a couple of different topologies here. They're not all the same. The Cappuccino is a dynamic driver IEM, 10mm, 15 ohms, 20 Hz to 20 kHz with a 2-pin cable. These other three are a little bit more complicated. We have a 4-balanced armature Boxster in a 1-2-1 configuration, being bass, mids, and treble. The Supra is a 2-2-2 config with 2 for the bass, 2 for the mids, and 2 for the treble region. And the Spyder gets the most, 8 drivers, 2 for the bass, 2 for the mids, and 4 for the treble region. There's a 3-way crossover designed by Jomo Audio themselves. Driving these IEMs is pretty consistent, but their ohmage is slightly different. We have 15, we have 18, but to be honest with you, balanced armatures, dynamic driver, this one being the only one. Shall we take a look inside and see what we get? So, if we open the Cappuccino, they all look identical case-wise, same material. We get a folio plastic-esque casing like this with all the tips. You get 2 styles with small, medium, and large. Also, we get silver-plated copper cable that is absolutely horrible. It's thin, it's janky, and it will take you 10 minutes just to unravel. So I'm not going to unravel it here. It literally took me 10 minutes just to test one of these IEMs this morning because it had knotted itself. But you do get a nice clasping leather material thingamajiggy so that you can spool the wire like this nicely, and we're gonna place that there, and we're gonna place that there to make sure the wire does not tangle up. And finally, we get this testicle separator bag here, nice and fluffy so you don't damage the IEMs. These themselves are the dynamic driver Cappuccino. Pretty large, ergonomically designed, nice thin bore actually. And placing that over here, that's the accessory, that is the Cappuccino. There's no point taking out any of the other accessories, they all look identical all the way up to the $1,000 region. No difference with any of them, but we shall take out the IEMs. This one is the Boxster. This one is the 4-balanced armature one, so we're going to take out the pouch here. This is the Boxster. We're going to look at that in a moment. Right there, fantastic. So throw that back in there because we don't need it right now. This is the Boxster. It's actually smaller than the Cappuccino, as you can see. Ooh, come here. It's actually quite a bit smaller than the 10mm dynamic driver inside the Cappuccino here. So I'm going to put it there. Ergonomically designed behind. This got a nice bit to go into the concha of the ear. It's a 2-pin connection, which is fantastic. Another thin bore, so you can actually not have too much trouble with tips. Quite happy about that. But this one has got a slightly bigger bore, as you can see. There's also something very interesting about the Boxster, about the Supra and the Spyder. They have actually a 3-bore system. The way like the ambient acoustics has a 2-bore system inside the bore, here, you get 3 in this one. I presume one's for the mid-range, one's for the bass, one's for the treble region, but I couldn't find much information about it, unfortunately, so if I do find anything, I'll put it in the description down below. Same accessories as usual, blah, blah, blah. The fluffy testicle bag here, I'm going to take these out now. This one is a 6-balanced armature unit, and it's the same size as the actual Boxster. Well done. 2 extra drivers in this thing. Bore is still very narrow. Conshaw is a little bit less, so it feels like, actually it looks like the same principle. This is carbon fiber, obviously forced, and a silver foil metal plating. Very nice. The Cappuccino is obviously 3D printed because that's the cheaper one. That's only 300. Let me place, let me place these here. Let's be OCD about the whole of this process so we can pick them up as we're talking about them during the sound section. And finally this one, as you can see, same cable even for the $1,000 unit. The mini jack 3.5, obviously this is not a single-ended cable for any of them. It's sheathed in this very small leprechaun condom so that it protects the jack so it doesn't get scratched. I'm going to place that back in the box because we really don't need it. They're all identical pretty much. Inside this fluffy bag again we have the Spyder. Now this one has 8 drivers. It has the same size bore, and I think pretty much, to be honest with you, they look like the same shell, just slightly different designs obviously. This one has 8 drivers obviously, 2 for the bass region, 2 for the mid-range. We're gonna place these Spyders there. We are getting a very busy table today, aren't we? Let me get rid of this thing because we don't need it. Cappuccino, $300, 10mm driver. Boxster, 4 balanced armatures. They are the new addition to the balanced armature family, released in 2021. So they're pretty new. They sound slightly different from the other variants that we've been using before then in some of the other IEMs. They sound a little bit sharper, but we will discuss that. Obviously, you guys know implementation is key. These IEMs are pretty much in manner of the 3 Bears and Goldilocks. One of these is the Goldilocks. Basically, the analogy goes too hot, too cold, and just right. Except in this situation, it's actually Goldilocks that's the prime focus because we have 2 variations of sound. With that, let's go through each one. Starting with the Cappuccino, this is a V-shaped IEM, and in a very good way actually, but it's not ultra detailed, but my goodness, that bass is ridiculous. It digs low, it sustains it well. And the tonal balance, you find that the mid-range tends to be a little lost, but you got the spicier edge of delivery on the treble region. But it sounds huge sonically, not stage. Stage actually is not too bad. I would say just outside your head and in front of you, but the main focus of the Cappuccino tends to be actually the bass region. It's fantastic for EDM, for exciting music, as long as you don't focus too much on detail retrieval, because its separation of elements is pretty decent. It's got a very large spike in the mid-bass region, but done quite well, and it works really well with the sub-bass region. But the mid-range is kind of recessed, and all of them are extraordinarily tip dependent. So you will find that your experiences going from one to another is really different when you change tips. And with that, the tips that obviously come with all of them is these 2 variants, these mushroom shaped ones here, and also these other very weird ones I've never seen. It's like the base of the tip is actually much wider than the bit that goes into your ear. This one is huge. One of these IEMs got a very large bore. I think it might be the Boxster. I'm going to pick it up in a second and actually see again. But yeah, one of them is pretty huge. But I don't like the stock tips. They not only scratch the inside of my ears, but on some of them, like the Spyder, Mia, I hope you're the Spyder and I didn't mess you up. I found that actually I could not get a seal with either tips, and all it did was give me a lot of treble region and a lot of ear pain. So the Cappuccino, overall sound V-shaped, nice mid-range region but rather recessed and set back over there. Special presentation is okay, but for a $300 IEM, there's better in the market, such as these, the Litshore S12s. But they are a planar IEM. But honestly, the timbre region is better on the Jomo Audio, the Cappuccino. And treble region is actually better on the Cappuccino too. It's a little bit more laid back, but it's a bit more realistic due to that dynamic driver. Honestly, it's very surprising. When you put these in your ears, the performance is quite excellent, genuinely. I think I could be quite happy with it, walking around with it, as long as I wasn't doing sort of the audiophile listening experience where I'm looking for that realism. But vocals are rather prominent and they're rather convincing. They don't sound like an Apple IEM, obviously. They sound pretty damn decent. Not bad at all in the slightest. And it's a very relaxing sound, even though it's V-shaped. It's not fatiguing, and that bass region is very, very exciting. But you do find that it does get a little congested, obviously, in the upper bass region and the lower mid-range, just because of the elevation of the bass region. That mid-bass spike is huge. It really does pop up. Let's discuss the Boxster. This one is a $600 IEM, 4 balanced armatures, and tonally I thought originally this was going to be my favorite. It's basically the toned down version of the Cappuccino, and the Supra is the toned down version of the Spyder. We've got two sets of very distinct sound characteristics. They don't cross, but tonally, if you were to go from one to another to another to another in the treble region, starts with the Cappuccino and it goes up, 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 all the way to the Spyder. So bear that in mind. The Boxster, 4 balanced armatures. It's a subtler V shape compared to the Cappuccino. You get a lot more of the mid-range. It's a little bit more toned down. It's a little bit more toned down in the actual mid-bass as well. But sub-bass does not hit as hard as the Cappuccino does. That's pretty damn freaking excellent, to be honest with you, and it really extends low. So for EDM, things like Monster Cat, Infected Mushroom, even if you're going as far as Polythea in the metal side of things, it really is fantastic. Spatial presentation is okay, textual information is alright. I really wouldn't pay $600 for the Boxster personally. It was gonna be my pick of the day out of this litter, but obviously changing tips, my views changed. Originally it was the most nicest tuned out of all of them, but the amount of difference that actually different tips make is quite shocking. Treble region, detail retrieval, they're all a little spicy around the 6 kHz. So when it gets to t, ch, etc., they're all designed to be, these three at least anyway, like studio monitors, and like reference studio equipment, there's a tiny bit of energy somewhere in the treble region that I find fatiguing. That goes all the way from these IEMs to something as insane as the Sale HM1. They all have this characteristic that I have a little aversion to, and it's been like that for the last 20 years. I've had quite a lot of experience with studio equipment, and that resonance seems to literally coincide with every studio equipment I've used, from their amps, from their headphones, from multiple manufacturers. I think it's a slight rise in the upper mid-range where you want elements of mastering to be detected, and yeah. So these are okay. The Boxster are okay. They're not bad. Everything they do is okay. Nice mid-range on all of them, to be fair, with variations of control and detail retrieval and separation. But now we're getting on to the exciting one. This is Goldilocks. This one is 6 balanced armatures like we mentioned. 222, bass, mids and treble. The layering for the Supra is fantastic in the depth region. They all have pretty much intimate stage to okay, like coming out here, but the depth and the separation and layering and spacing of the Supra is my favorite. It's still slightly treble emphasized, so you get very detailed treble region in the lower treble and mid treble, good air up there, very delicate sounding treble for guitar plucks, plectrum detection, etc. It's very nuanced and it's very clean and very smooth, though forward very smooth. So when you're listening to live music and you get the applause and the resonance from the stadium or arena, it really does highlight and showcase where the track was recorded. This one is pretty special. Supra is definitely my favorite Jomo Audio, but all of these IEMs are rather picky for tips, rather picky for source, which we will get onto momentarily. I'm actually going to discuss why all of these things are on the table. Hopefully they're in frame. If not, I'll throw them on screen. I find punch is excellent on the Supra, but done tastefully. Sub bass does not extend on any of these IEMs as much as the Cappuccino does. That one really digs low, but technically these are a bit more superior. But unfortunately, with all of these three, the Boxster, Supra and Spyder, you'd get a balanced armature timbre. Very few IEMs in the world can alleviate and eliminate this timbral information you get from balanced armatures, those being the Anole VX and the Ambient Acoustics MAT 24 and MAT 16. You can't tell they're balanced armatures. It's insane. It's absolutely incredible. Even on the 64 audios, U12T, A18, etc. and U18, I found I could hear the balanced armature timbre right the way through their entire line. But though tonally, the U12T is absolutely superb. Would love to get that in for review at some point. So, layering is very nice on these. These are a convincing, the Supra that is, convincing IEM that I actually think are worthy $800 price tag. Excellent. Though still a tiny bit spicy. They do remind me of the Abyss AB1266 back there in regards to the treble region where it's a little bit forward, but they do actually more coincide with the ZMF VC tuning on the lambskin pads more than anything else. It's that sort of sound signature if you're used to that. But out of these four, that's my favorite. That's my go-to if I was to ever buy a Jomo Audio IEM. Finally, we get to the Spyder. This is $1,000 IEM. This IEM is in the territory of Monarch Mark IIs. I'm very sorry, they fall short. They might be very detailed in the treble region, very smooth. Unless there is a tip out there that I've not discovered yet that turns these into gods, and I wouldn't be too surprised, to be honest with you. All the emphasis seems to be on the treble region. So if you're listening to jazz, if you're listening to classical music and you really want the top end of instruments or instruments that reside in this register, you should buy a Spyder because they're very smooth, very forward in that treble region, very, very transparent, very detailed, and ultra convincing. I've got to give Jomo Audio this at least. Their IEMs are convincing. Listening to Flux Pavilion this morning randomly popping up on the P6P. This is the Luxury and Precision P6 Pro, a $4,000 DAP. The review will be coming at some point. It's got a ladder DAC inside and it's God. It's basically a Spring 3 on the go. Literally that level of good. Not that it's like a Spring 3. It pretty much is a freaking Spring 3. It's absolutely freaking fantastic. So all of these IEMs have been run on very high-end equipment, which I will explain in a moment. So yeah, the Spyder, it's very treble forward. Mid bass is very, very, very gentle. Sub bass is there, but it's very much in reminiscent of something like the T1 from Bear Dynamics. Too much emphasized in this area. Also, the upper mid bass, which we will get onto when we break down the frequency response of all of these and do a side by side, it's very much like the LCD5, where it's very, very forward in the ear gain region. And for somebody who's very sensitive to this area, like myself, obviously, it can be very, very forward in regards to harshly recorded songs, obviously, but it does sound very clean, very present, very domineering. And actually sounds pretty decent in that region, to be honest with you. I like the mid-range on those, and I like the treble region too, but you have to listen ultra quietly or to music that's really well mastered to get the subtlest of fluctuations within the track. And it pulls out all the information. But I do find it fatiguing, most definitely. My favorite is Supra. Supra is fantastic. It's a subtly V-shaped IEM and it's my favorite of these four. The testing for these IEMs, all of them, have been done on the following. The Chord Hugo 2 here, this is a big boy. Check out the review if you're interested, if it's out already. This one is the Q-Style M15, a dongle. This one is the Chord Mojo 2. Obviously, because of DSP correction, you can fix some of these IEMs if the tuning is not to your liking. That's been absolutely fantastic. Occasionally, I've been using the IFI Diablo. More consistently out of all of them, my flagship Luxury and Precision P6 Pro Ladder DAC DAP. This is heaven. This is a proper desktop setup on the go, and the review will be coming for that sometime soon. Tested on very high-end equipment, all the way from $250 being the M15, all the way up to a $4,000 DAP across the board. And tonally, they all change subtly. You find without the ladder DAC, these can become a little more harsh than they are, like on the Diablo and on the Mojo 2. Hugo 2 is a little bit softer, M15 is not too bad, it's down the middle and down the road. But Hugo 2 provides a fantastic amount of punch. Layering is fantastic on Diablo. P6P is fantastic across the entire spectrum. It will give you the absolute end limits of the IEM's capabilities. So, with that, let's break down the frequency response. Sub-bass. I give it to Cappuccino first. It's more visceral, impactful, elevated and consistent, but in regards to textual information, detail information, retrieval and separation, I give it to Supra. Then these two last, the Boxster and Spyder. Boxster is a bit congested and Spyder is there and audible and quite technical, not too bad, but it's not on the levels of this one. But we find it's a dynamic driver and they tend to be a little bit, well, more dynamic than balanced armatures. Climbing up to the mid-bass I would give to Supra first. Then if I was really forced to, I would give it to the Cappuccino next, because though it's forward and it's elevated, it's so much fun. It's so much fun. Technically, Supra obviously takes it. Then I give it to Cappuccino and then I give it to Spyder, because it's the flagship and it's quite technical, but it's very, very recessed, like very, very laid back. On those tips I tried, 3 of them actually, in fact. It's there, it provides it when it needs it, but when you turn up the volume, because you kind of need to open it up, treble region really comes forward and murders you a little bit. In a smooth way, but it's so forward. So if you're sensitive, avoid. The upper bass region, I will give it to Supra first, then I will give it to Spyder, then I would give it to Boxster, then I would give it to Cappuccino. This one's the most congested. For technicality, for textual information, Supra takes it. It doesn't get in the way of the mid-range. It's fantastic. It leads good credence to the treble region when it requires it. Honestly, Supra is my favorite Jomo Audio IEM on the table. The mid-range, it's a fight between Spyder and Supra. They're very well defined, very convincing, very clear, very clean, and very articulate when it comes to strings. Separation on the Supra is insane, ridiculously holographic. I love it. It's fantastic. More tailed back on the Spyder, on Boxster, and almost non-existent on the Cappuccino. It's very recessed. And the upper bass region climbs in, kicks over the furniture and goes, get out of the way, it's bass time. So bear that in mind. The mid-mids, it's the same story as the lower mids, but the upper mids, we have to be a little bit careful here. The Spyder can be shouty, it's got quite a lot of ear gain, but for well-recorded tracks it's very articulate. But I give it to Supra first, then Spyder. then I would give it to Boxster, then finally I would give it to the Cappuccino. Let's talk about the treble region. Detail retrieval, smoothness. Spyder would take it. Spyder is very, very, very domineering in this region in regards to technical ability, forwardness, detail retrieval, airiness, and actually being able to dig out the last bit of information in that region. But Supra, it's done more tastefully and it's more to my liking. So what do I prefer, the technicality or the tuning? For tuning, I would take Supra. For technicality, I would probably take Spyder, though it's very forward. Then I would take, incidentally, Cappuccino. It's more laid back, it's more pleasant. Then I would take Boxster last. This one seems to be just down the road for everything at the moment. And vocal presentation's excellent on all of them, I must admit. It's very present, it's good texturally, good, it's visceral in regards to emotions, it's well separated. Supra first, Spyder second, Boxster, and then finally Cappuccino. Timbral information is okay on all of them. Spyder and Supra really do fight it out. It's quite realistic, it's very convincing, it's not too bad at all, but imaging and layering and holographicness, Supra takes it over all of them. Supra is great. I think they did right by this IEM. This one is kind of my favorite. In conclusion, Mummy Bear, Daddy Bear, Baby Bear. I'm gonna put them like this. Mummy Bear is actually Cappuccino, where Mummy Bear's just had a baby. She's not looking her absolute best, but she's fun. She makes life fun. She just brings the party to the house, and that's Cappuccino. Daddy Bear, I would say, is a bit more like the Spyder. Focused, but only in one area. Very good at what it does, but pretty awful at other things and just mediocre down the road. Maybe Mummy Bear's really kind of annoyed with him. And Baby Bear is this one. Content, nice across the board and just okay. Goldilocks is Supra. Goldilocks is the character that is not part of the family. Goldilocks is a naughty one. And she's adventurous and a little mad. I'd take Supra. Let's do the tiger scores. Overall scoring, fit and finish for these three, obviously first because this one was made first. I would say 3 tigers out of 5 for these three, and I would give this one 2 tigers. It's okay, it's a little bit bulky. Though it isolates more, to be fair, so there is that going for it, but these are more conducive to a better experience. Design, 3 solid tigers for these three, 2 tigers for this one. I'm not a fan of this one design-wise very much here. It's alright. It's a little bit bulky. Comfort, incidentally, it's this one. I don't know why. They seem to be identical, all 3 of them, honestly, but for some reason, Supra seems to fit my ears the best. And then Cappuccino. For that, I'll give 3 solid tigers. Sound quality, Supra, 4 solid tigers. Spyder, 2 solid tigers. Boxster, 2 solid tigers. Cappuccino, 3 solid tigers. It's been an interesting line of headphones. They all belong to the same family, you can tell. The characteristics are definitely there. If you've got any questions, put it in the comment section down below. I'll be down there momentarily to answer anything you have to say. They have a super flagship one of these. It's $3,500, and hopefully I can bring that in for review at some point if a viewer is kind enough to throw it at us, so we can actually put it up against some of the other super flagships we have here. And if you enjoy reviews such as these, there will be another shootout coming very, very shortly from Moondrop. That would be the Moondrop ARIA, the Moondrop KATO, the Variations, and the Starlight. And that will follow this one. So, if you like that kind of review, press subscribe, press the notification icon so you don't miss it. And if you like reviews like these, consider joining Patreon, where you get early reviews before anyone else. You get to jump into the private Telegram chat. I will be able to talk to you about equipment that comes in before anyone else, and we are going through the learning process and we're discussing what the hell happens in there, etc., as the review progresses. If not, your like, your view, your sharing is all I require from you. Until next time, peace.